Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thanks for hanging out for a couple minutes. We had a ton of people register for this event, and I think that it really makes sense because it's something very interesting, and we are always in search of whatever we can do to support our kiddos. That said, this is being recorded, and so we'll be able to share it out with people who registered and with you all. We're excited for you to hang out with us, though, because you'll be able to ask questions to Paul after his presentation. And I think you'll find this really interesting, and you might have some things that you want to find out more about. My name is Rebecca Seaton. I'm a member of Community of Concern, which is a group of middle and high school parents who produce events and initiatives to raise awareness about adolescent youth mental health and wellness. I'm here with Paul Tieger. He's an expert in psychology of personality and an author of 5 books, including Do What You Are and the best-selling parenting guide, Nurture by Nature. And Paul also happens to have raised kids in West Hartford and lives here now.
I did.
So Paul, yeah, and Paul's working to improve youth wellness by looking at the relationship between personality traits and vulnerabilities that might impact mental health. He has some good advice for what to do with that information to support and perhaps prevent difficult situations for youth and young people as they grow. Given the work that he's doing and what Community of Concern does, we thought this would be a good partnership. So we're hosting tonight, and we're really grateful to have West Hartford Community Interactive, who is producing the event, and they're going to do the recording. It'll be on the WHCi YouTube channel, and then we'll share it out with you in an email. So Paul's presentation is about 30 minutes, right, Paul?
Mhm.
And then afterward, he'll answer questions. So if he'd really love it if you would put your video on so that we can see your lovely faces, unless you're having a really bad hair day. But it's always nice to see the audience. And this format allows you to do that. And as limiting as it can be, it's nice to have that option. So without further ado, Paul,
What do
please
you need, honey?
Thanks,
Did
Rebecca.
you finish everything, Des?
Are you talking to me? I don't know if you can hear that. Somebody's not muted, but that's okay. First of all, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, WHCi, and for the really, really, really important work that the Community of Concern does. And I'm really flattered and honored to be here tonight. So I'll just fill in the blanks a little bit. I have been using personality psychology for many, many, many years. I've also done a lot of research, 5 studies with over 50,000 individuals. And my research, and I'll share a little bit about that with you tonight, shows that there's a very strong correlation between someone's innate personality type, which I'm going to explain, and anxiety and depression, and other health risk factors. So I don't pretend to be the expert on your child, but I do think that I've got something to share that will help you understand them from a different perspective. And I think everyone on this call is acutely aware, there is a huge anxiety and depression epidemic in this country, especially around kids. And my mission really is to help reduce anxiety and depression in kids. And I think that the tools that I've created can go a long way to helping to do that. So having said that, I am going to try to make the magic work here with my PowerPoint. And we'll see if we can make it work. And please let me know when you can see my screen.
We can see it.
Great.
Yep, we can see it.
So we're calling this program Raising Sensitive Teens. And what I'm going to try to do in the next half hour is to really help you understand how some teens are much more prone to anxiety and depression than others, how to identify those, and what to do about it. So first I want to start off by showing you this picture. This is a 13-year-old Paul Tieger. And I know what you're thinking. I haven't changed a bit. And in some ways, you're right, because personality-wise, I really have not changed a bit. And I don't believe that many of us do. So here's me at a microphone. I don't know if I'm singing or making a speech, but it's not too different than what I do every Friday night, which is saying at an open mic in Collinsville, Connecticut, and speaking to you tonight. This is Herbie and Evelyn Tieger, the parents I was lucky enough to be born into, and lucky for a lot of reasons, but one of which is they really got me. They understood who I was. And one of the things that really is central to my personality is my creativity. So when I was about 10 or 12, I decided I wanted to build a barbecue pit in my backyard, a barbecue grill. Now, I didn't know anything about this stuff. I just knew that I'd seen some cool ones in the neighborhood. I said, I really want to do that. And I became really obsessed about doing it. So my parents, to their credit, allowed me to do this. And I'm going to show you now absolutely the ugliest installation that has ever been placed in a suburban home ever. And that is this. And I'm not looking for, I hope you understand, this is no false pride here. This is really ugly. And that's okay. And I think that if you look at it closely, I think the flue is actually a sewer pipe. So it gives you a sense of how little I knew about engineering and building. But the point is that I was really obsessed with exercising my creativity, and my parents knew me well enough to know that was important. Now, not only did they let me build this thing, they allowed me to cook for their friends and neighbors. So there might have been some conversations that, that they had in the evening that I never heard if they were embarrassed or not. But I attribute that attitude and that understanding of who I was and am, and encouraging that to have led me to where I am in my life today. So I think of personality as a combination of personality is nature and nurture. Nature is the parents that nature is what we're born with, those intrinsic little qualities, and nurture is everything else, especially most important are the parents that we are born into, but it could be the socioeconomic climate, our status, our religion, geography, all kinds of things. So you get this woman and she's watering a lemon tree. It looks like she's very diligent about it. But you know what? No matter what she does, she can't turn this into an apple tree. It doesn't work that way. Any more than a parent can take this thoughtful, gentle, poetic little kid and turn him or her into a crashing football player. It doesn't work that way. They can try, but that's what therapists are for. So my message today is really, we're going to talk about nature and nurture, but mostly around nature, what we were born with. And I want to bring in anxiety and depression kind of early on, because the current thinking about what causes the risk factors for anxiety and depression are trauma, of course, stressful events, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, relationship problems, family history, neurodevelopmental disorders, physical illness. And those are all valid and they're all legitimate. But my research has shown that there is another risk factor that I think might be more potent, or at least as potent as any of those that nobody talks about, nobody's done the research on, which is a person's inborn personality type. Okay. So I want to present to you a new way of thinking about preventing, about mental health and prevention. We all know that fair-skinned people, kids, but grown-ups too, are more prone to sunburn. We also know that sunburned people are more prone to getting melanoma, cancer. We also know that just reasonable precautions, such as sunscreen, clothing, reduces the risk of melanoma by 50%. And what I didn't know until I started doing this research is that if melanoma is caught quickly or early, the 5-year survival rate is 99%. So why don't we focus on prevention, early detection with anxiety and depression? And I would argue that we didn't know how to do that. We didn't have the tools to do that until now. So the TPIC, which is named Tieger Personality Indicator for Children, is an assessment that I created. I'm hoping that some of you took that, or all of you. You'll have an opportunity to later on if you care to. And it is the first assessment that allows parents to quickly and accurately identify if their child might be at increased risk for anxiety and depression, and gives them some very concrete tools, if that's the case, about how to help those children. So that's what I'm going to do now, is introduce you to this TPIC. So it helps parents understand their children at a different level, risk potential, tips for engaging them, resources if they are increased risk. I'm going to share with you at the end, if I've got time, some of the validation study that we did, which ended up showing that this assessment, although it only takes less than 3 minutes, is 93% accurate with kids as young as 10 years old. And the results are something that this is designed for parents. It's not for educators. It's not for school counselors, pediatricians. It's designed for parents, but they can easily share this tool and the results with these other professions. So I'm going to share with you 5 personality types. And as you look at these, you might want to think about which one of these is more true for your child. Nobody is exclusively a personality type, but everybody is primarily. So most people, it's the 93%, are able to see their kid in this assessment. I'm not a validated assessment, so you might not see it here, but I encourage you to try it. This is based on what I call the Young-Myers model. Some of you know Myers-Briggs. It's the most widely used personality assessment in the world. But this is a modification of that based on the research I've done. So I don't use any personality type language here. I have my own lingo for this. First, we have responsible hard workers, almost half the population. And these are kids who are serious, responsible, dependable, organized. They like their routines. They do their homework. They organize. They clean up after themselves. They show up on time. They do the things they're supposed to do. Not all of them, of course, but as a group, they tend to be this way. And they're people that tend to respect authority, parents, teachers, ministers, etc. So that's type 1. The second group I call strategic problem solvers. And these are the kids, even though they're only 10%, that are really intellectually curious. They love learning. They're success driven. They're confident, competent, logic driven. They're often competitive. They're often kids that gravitate to the top of their classes because they love learning and academics. Even though they're only 10% of the population, they really run the world. They're 85% of C-level executives. And these are the kids that push back, the kids that want to question things. And it's important for parents to know this because they're not trying to do this just to be a pain in the neck. They're trying to do this because this is the way their brains work. This is hardwiring. The third group I call adventurous free spirits, and these kids are very different. They're playful, they're casual, they're spontaneous, they like to take risks, they're often physical kids, they're often athletes, not always. They tend to be impulsive, they're competitive, and they are not the kids that follow the rules or conform to what their parents or authority figures want them to do. Hence the logo I have here of a kid kind of on a skateboard. They're often usually very, very active kids. The next group are sort of related to the adventurous free spirits in that they like to live in the moment, but they're very, very sensitive. So they're humble, warm, nurturing, caring, playful, accommodating. They're not not people that get into conflicts. They avoid conflict, sort of like the plague. Very nurturing type, and they're about 9% of the population. And then the last group I call creative sensitive souls. We are, and this is my type as well, we are the empaths, people that are perceptive about people. We tend to be very idealistic, compassionate. We're the kids that are often alternative and artsy and march to a different beat. So in some cases, we're much more susceptible to bullying because we stand out and we are so sensitive, and we seek harmony, and we are the warriors. So those are the 5 types. And I think that most people can see one of those that is most like their kid. It's not going to be exclusively, but most like their kid, as long as they're at least 10 years old. So here's where the rubber meets the road. Survey that I did, research that was published with 10,500 people, which is a very large representative sample, showed that responsible hard workers reported a lot less depression, a lot less anxiety, and a lot less severe anxiety and depression, as did the strategic problem solvers. much less depression, less anxiety, less severe anxiety depression. So I consider these two groups to be low risks. Doesn't mean that there aren't individuals in these groups that might not suffer from anxiety depression, but as a group, they're low risk. Then you get the adventurous free spirits who report more depression, more anxiety, and more severe anxiety depression. So I consider them to be a moderate risk. The fourth group, the gentle, humble helpers, a lot more depression, a lot more anxiety, and a lot more severe anxiety depression. So I consider them to be high risk. And the last group, creative sensitive souls, reported a lot more depression, a lot more anxiety, and a ton more severe anxiety depression. So I consider these people to be very high risk. Again, it doesn't mean that some individuals in this group, first group, are not going to have problems, or that all the people that are creative sensitive souls are going to have problems. That's not what this means, because everyone is an individual. And we're all susceptible to all kinds of situations. So let me take a look at why these two groups, these two types, the gentle, humble helpers and the
computer back on. This is too
gentle, humble helpers and the creative sensitive souls are at greater risk. For the gentle, humble helpers, these are people that really focus on the specifics. So they only see simple solutions. They don't see complexities. They don't see subtleties. They don't look to the future. They don't see options. They live in the moment. And they tend to be impulsive. So they've got strong responsibility, the feeling of strong responsibility for other people. And this combination makes them pretty vulnerable, right? The second group, the creative sensitive souls, they're more intuitive, so they do look outward, consider the big picture, how things are connected. They tend to be very idealistic and easily disappointed. They know the way the world should be, and it isn't, and that causes them pain. These are the kids that worry and obsess. They also have vivid imaginations, feel a lot of guilt and shame, and often don't feel like they fit in. So between these two groups that are highest risk, the thing they have in common is they're both extremely sensitive and they don't share their feelings easily. This is tough even for the most diligent parents because there's stuff going on with these kids and they just don't share it. So what's really significant about this is this represents over a quarter or 6.5 million kids and adolescents between 12 and 17 in the US. These are the kids we really need to pay attention to. So how do you connect with these folks? I'm going to just share with you briefly how do you connect with some of the high-risk ones. And when we do the Q&A, if anyone would like to look more at a type they think their child might be, happy to do that. Okay, so with these kids, it's really, really important not to judge them or rush them through their feelings. Feelings are everything to these kids. And if they're invalidated, if just you're okay, just buck up and quit your crying and I'll give you something to cry about, any of that nonsense that some people at one point were taught to do. These kids really pay a big price for that. These are kids that really value their individuality and their uniqueness. And I think it's important. We all want to be valued and cherished for who we are. This is who these kids are. And they need to have that expressed to them frequently and to be shown affection. These are kids that it's really dangerous to give them the silent treatment because it teaches them, who are naturally kids that don't share, it's even more important for you not to share their feelings, what's going on. These are all kids that also are people pleaser. So they tend to, they try to please people. So that's their natural orientation. And it's important for parents to allow them and to encourage them to speak their truth and not just have to make other people feel okay. And because these kids are creative, like little Paul was when he was 10 and now he is at this age, it's really important to encourage their creativity and originality. So I'm hoping this makes sense to you. In the report for the TPIC, these bullets are all there, as well as other advice. I'll spend a minute or two to talk about the gentle, humble helpers and how to reach them. These are kids that are very tactile and kinesthetic, and they need physical affection. Hugs, kisses, especially young ones before they don't want to know you, to be told that they're loved often. Given specific instructions and directions. These are kids who are really quite literal. You need to show them what you mean, not just tell them what you think you mean. These are kids that are climbing walls and climbing on, doing dangerous things, and you need to encourage them to do that because that's what they're all about. But to also help them to play in a way that is not going to put them in jeopardy. If you can be spontaneous, if you can say, hey, let's go out for ice cream, like right now, let's do it. And they're not expecting that because now it's bath time. That's a great way to connect with these kids. Their feelings need to be supported. They need to be allowed to express them in their own time. And the incentives for these kids are physical, tangible, fun rewards and treats. Freedom, getting to spend another 15 minutes to stay up, or going out and doing things, that kind of thing. So those are the two that are most at risk. I'm going to skip over these next ones just for the value of time, but I want to talk about another piece that's really concerning, and that is what's fueling this whole epidemic of anxiety and depression, and that is digital addiction and social media. And I use the word digital addiction deliberately because that it is the most pernicious and intense addiction that, in my judgment, that we all experience. Very few people drink all day long, drug all day long, have sex all day long, eat all day long, gamble all day long, but pretty much everybody does this all day long. Does this all day long. And so digital addiction is a real problem, and not just for kids. The problem, I think, is just as important and intense for parents. We know that kids spend an enormous amount of time on looking at screens, but parents do as well. Digital addiction prevents many parents from having the kinds of conversations with these especially sensitive kids that they really need, desperately need. I'm sure that you have all seen these kinds of scenarios happen on a daily basis in almost every venue. I'm at Starbucks every day. I see it every day. I'm at the grocery store often. I see it at the grocery store every day. And the reality is parents that are looking at their screens and not paying attention to their kids are sending them a powerful message. And that is, whatever I'm doing on my screen is more important than what you have to offer right now. I get why we do this. I get that it happens, it has to happen occasionally, but parents really need to pay attention to this. And it's only now that schools, and I know there's some great programs in West Hartford, for example, brought through the Community Concern and other groups to make people aware of this. So I want to spend just a minute or two telling you about how this assessment was validated to give you confidence in it. And many of you might know that the majority of research is really not all that robust or thorough or accurate, mostly because it's done in academia. There are a lot of pressures to produce. There are things which are called convenient samples. In other words, you've got to collect data, especially social science data. But the way you do it is to survey 100 psychology students who come from Long Island. That is not data. It's not good data. It's not good research. The research that you're going to see here is very thoughtfully done with some partners who are the leading researchers in the country. So of the 5 personality types, there was a good mix of all 5 of those, which is important. Enough of each type to be able to extrapolate results. The parents, who are the subjects of this study, good mix of white, African American. Weren't as many Hispanic parents as I wanted, but it's really unusual also to get almost 40% African Americans in this kind of study, which is important. In terms of high school or college education, good mix. In terms of the children, a good mix between males and females, and the ages of these kids in these five age groups were almost identical. We asked parents if their children suffer from anxiety, depression, now in the past 2 years. 42% said yes, which tracks with national figures. And so the thing that I was most gratified, when you do research, you never know what's going to happen until you press the button and see the results. I was really very pleasantly surprised that 86% of the parents who took this said the report is quite easy to identify their child's type. 88% thought the information was very or quite useful, and a whopping 93% said the description was very or quite accurate, regardless of whether they had a high school or college education or what their racial ethnicity was. So this as a researcher made me very confident that what we're sharing here is real, and clearly it's needed. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and see if you got some questions. I'm going to, before I skip this, go to the gallery view. I'm going to see if there's some questions of anybody that needs me to go back to any particular slides, and then I'll go back to the gallery view so we can engage in this conversation. Is there anybody that needs to see any other slides before I do that? Okay, I'm going to do this then.
Wait, Paul. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, I should have caught you earlier. Could you please go back to the slide for the kiddo who is moderately at risk?
Yes, okay.
Because I think I have a kid in that category, and I would really like to see what are what's the advice?
Sure. Oh,
and maybe somebody else.
Sure,
Yeah.
Of course. I will be happy to do that. These are called adventurous free spirits. And these are kids that really run on adrenaline. If you've got one of these kids, they tend to be very active, very playful, engaged all the time, spontaneous. So this was a little typo there. I apologize for that. I just noticed it. I'll blame my dyslexia on that, but I can't really do that. So it's activities, it's treats, it's positive behavior, it's rewarding positive behavior, making chores, making games out of chores if you can do that. Recognizing that these kids don't learn by people going blah, 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 or reading books. These kids learn by doing things. Going down to the creek and putting your hands in the water and catching frogs, that's how they learn biology. It's not from books. We got to teach them how to take reasonable risks that excite them. Let's climb the wall only halfway this time. I had a kid who wasn't this type, but was very physical and took a lot of risks. And this was a challenge, as it is for all kids who are adventurous free spirits. And I think that's important. These are not feely-weely kids. These are not warm and fuzzy kids like the humble helpers are. These are kids who are much more logical thinking. So it's easy for parents who are sensitive to feel that their kids do not love them as much. And it's important for parents not to misinterpret a lack of affection for a lack of caring. That's just not who these kids are. Hopefully that makes sense to you. And these are kids that need to have boundaries that are very clear, because boundaries are always elastic for them. So we have to tell them what we mean what we tell them, explain it. They don't do subtle, they don't do context, they don't do big picture stuff, they do concrete. Rebecca, does that help at all?
Oh, 100%.
Okay, well, you could have said something different. So.
I'm going to actually take a screenshot and share this with my husband. Thank you.
Okay, well, it all is in the report. I mean,
thank you.
You're welcome.
So does anyone else have a question about the slides before we stop sharing? Feel free to just unmute or raise your hand or put it in the chat.
Anybody else before I move?
Paul, I have a question, but I don't know that I necessarily need the slides for it.
Okay,
But
so Lindsay, let me stop this. And let me make my pitch one more time. If there's anybody who is willing to put their beautiful face on the screen, that's a lovely thing. It's just always more human. I mean, we're all used to Zooming, but it's really, we try to make this as human an experience as we can. So if you are willing to share, that will be one. Oh, there you are. Courtney, thanks so very much. KM, whoever you are, thank you very much. Angela, Jeremy, Lindsay. Anyway, so go ahead, Lindsay.
I just I wanted to put a plug in too about the tendency of parents to look at this and go, oh, but my type is this. And just to remember that this is the kids types that's like age 10 to 17. And I think the tendency of parents is to be like, oh, this makes sense because I'm like this. And that's kind of, you've got a whole different book for that, really. So I just wanted you to kind of explain the parent take on this as well.
Thank you so much. That's really, really important. So the dynamic personality type tells you a lot about, it doesn't tell everything, but it really does explain a lot about who we are, who our children are. And if you're similar to your child, I was very, very lucky because both my spouse and both my kids were similar to me in type. Honestly, we really looked at it. It was pretty easy. Doesn't happen often. And when you're different from your kid's type, it is really challenging because we all want people to be like us and we all expect them to be. And then all of a sudden they go, what? What is that about? So there are specific challenges. If let's say you are kind of a very logical, analytical, sort of objective, tough-minded parent. Nothing wrong with that. That's just you're wired. That's who you are. And you're blessed with this very sensitive little child. You've got to stretch because the kid's not going to stretch to you. You've got to take a step back and really let that kid, ask that kid how they're feeling and give them time to process their feelings and reinforce their feelings and not try to stifle them. That can make all the difference in the world, as one example. If you're a person who is very concrete and realistic, and you're blessed with one of these little creative Pauls that's always making up stuff and imaginary playmates and all these things that you just, what the heck they're talking about, you don't know. You got to run with that. You really have to run with it. You're the parent. That's your job to bend to them, not the other way around. I hope that doesn't sound like a lecture, but it's based on a lot of research and a lot of observation. And I'm happy to clarify that. Lindsay, is that sort of where you were going? Is there something you'd like to add based on your own experience or anybody else's experience? Okay. So I know that
Jeremy, Paul, Jeremy's got a hand up.
Sure. Okay, Jeremy, please. Could you unmute?
Yeah, just curious, and I don't know if I'm rushing ahead here, whether this was something you would cover, but where does neurodivergence fit into this? Like, because sometimes, like, oh, if you're neurodivergent, you're probably within the sensitive range already, or is it possible to be any of those types? Where does that interplay come?
It's a great question. I'm happy to address it. There has been no research that I'm aware of about personality type and neurodivergence, unfortunately. So this is not designed, and it says in the instructions, for kids who are neurodivergent, OCD, ADD, ADHD, et cetera, because it's an overlay. It doesn't mean they don't have personality types. It doesn't mean that a lot of this will apply, but there are other factors that are impinging on their behavior and their brains, right? So it's not for everybody. And I encourage you, if you looked at this and you took it for your kid, you might see really it might be right on or it might not be because of what we're talking about. Does that make sense to you?
Sure.
So people with, serious psychological issues, personality disorders, it's just not the right tool for parents. And this, again, is something that I created specifically for parents and not professionals, right? Because parents know their kids better than anybody else. And when there are certain problems, they take their kids to pediatricians. They may or may not really be wired into this world, but they know more than parents do about it usually. But parents know their kids. And my real concern, my whole mission here is to make parents aware that sensitive feeling kids do not share their feelings easily. And I do a lot of work in the suicide prevention community as well. And I will tell you that there are so many parents that I've talked with that were completely blindsided. Kids were kids appeared to be healthy. They had friends. They were doing well in school. They were looking forward to stuff. They're captain of the cheerleading team, and then they take their life. And the parents go, what happened? And this is not to blame the parents. This is what I'm saying is these kids felt things deeply, but don't share them. So it's really, really important to encourage parents, especially if you think your kids might be in that fourth or fifth group, to really key into who they are. Put your phones down, and look them in the face and say, what's going on? Tell them what's going on, and make it easy for them and comfortable for them to tell you what's going on. Thanks for the question, Jeremy. Other questions? I know there must be things noodling around up there. And this is the time.
Paul, I'll ask, we've talked about this. We have some prepared questions. But Jeremy, I just want to say thanks for that question because I had that question for Paul too when we were planning this event. What if a child's personality traits doesn't fit neatly into one type or another? You can kind of see like more crossover.
Right. A great question that I wrote. I mean, a great question that we're going to ask. That is that for most people, I mean, no assessment, psychological, sociological assessment is going to be 100%, especially when it takes 3 minutes to do, right? And not done by a professional. So there are going to be parents that go, and I've done this with many, many parents who go, that's my kid. How'd you know that? Like instantly. Other people, well, it could be 3, it could be a 2, sometimes this, sometimes that. And that's fine too, because kids are complicated. So I would say that if you think that, first of all, in the instructions for the TPIC, it says, take a look at these, and it's not going to be 100%, maybe like 80%. You're going to see some bullets about one type that resonate, maybe a few from another type. You're looking at the whole side of sort of the gestalt. So if you take it and you go, not really my kid, then this assessment you can take as many times as you want. It's anonymous, it's free. You're the only person that gets the results. I would encourage you to take it with one of the other types that you think might be in mind. And I think my experience is most people then will go, this is a much better fit. Does that answer that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else did we come up with? I mean, what else do we want to know?
Well, we had also talked about, and I think you did talk about this in the slideshow, but I wonder if anyone else is wondering kind of that question of is personality really, you're born with it, right? Does it change over time? You talked about nurture and nature, so there is some intersectionality, right? But
Sure.
what would you say to that?
I believe I've been doing this for Gulp 45 years. I do believe having a lot of experiential, anecdotal research, but a lot of scientific research as well, that people are born with a personality type. And for the people who, for the parents who are here, and I've asked this question, these 3 questions of 1,000 people in a room, in a live room when we used to meet in person. I'd say, how many of you have children? And about 80% of the hands go up. How many of you have more than one child? About 70% of the hands stay up. How many of your children are like each other? Every hand goes down, except for the person who wants to just be a pain in the butt. And, there are certain people who want to do that, and knowing a little bit about personality type helps me know how to answer that question. But the reality is that most people will say, my kids were different in utero. They're just different, right? So even if you don't buy that notion, if you're uncomfortable with that, most child psychologists will say by the time a kid's 5, they're cooked. They're baked. That's who they are. They're not going to change the personality. Certainly trauma can change that. Sexual abuse, horrible things like that can change a person, change the behavior. But I don't believe a person's personality type changes. That's the opinion of this guy right here.
Thanks. Yeah. Any other questions? And you can put something in the chat, please feel free. Or Angela, do you have
I,
something?
yeah, I had a question.
Sure.
Really interesting. I guess I'm wondering if you have a child who's more in that like 4 or 5 category and they are expressing like worry or anxiety, what can you do to help them other than just listen and give them hugs?
I think you should see counseling. I think if
Okay.
you've got a kid that is 4 or 5, and yeah, it's great that they're expressing their feelings. It's really important that they are. That's good news. It's really good news. But think about, we as grown-ups, when we're anxious or about something, how hard that is for us to process. So now try to imagine what it's like for a little kid who doesn't have the cognitive skills, doesn't have the frontal lobe to kind of reason this thing out. They just know they feel bad. And some of the kids, especially the 4s, don't think they're ever going to feel any different because they don't really imagine that. So I don't want to freak you out about it. I think it's a really good question. And I think and it doesn't mean, please, this is not destiny. It doesn't mean that if a kid is general humble helper or creative sense of soul, they're destined to have problems. It doesn't. It just means there's a predisposition. So being the good mom that you are, Angela, it's staying on it. It's continuing to check in. That's what you do. And if they need the help, it's getting the help. Does that help at all?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'll
Um,
just share that, well, just to Angela, your question is a good one, and the counseling piece. I have 3 children, very different, and my kids have all engaged in counseling in some form or fashion. And it's not easy. You got to go, through insurance and find the right person, and are they available, and is it a good fit? And, having done that, I think it can be very beneficial. And I've had one of my children did a group experience with the Institute of Living. And then my other kids have talked one-on-one with counselors. So it's not, it doesn't go on forever. It can be like during a certain period. But it's helped them kind of talk to somebody without judgment that's not a parent. I mean, I think right, we can do a lot, but we can only do so much when it comes to what our kids need to sort of deal with some of these
Yeah,
struggles.
I would really echo that, Rebecca. I mean, and you guys are all West Hartford-ish, right? Or West Hartford. There's some really, really great child psychologists, therapists in this area. Really, really good ones. If anyone wants to contact me, I'm happy to make a referral for you. And I wanted to just give you there was another slide that had my, no phone number or an email address, and happy to talk to anybody offline on this about either your situations. And I'm not a therapist, so I don't pretend to be one, but I can share what I know, and happy to do that.
What else? Anybody wondering something else for Paul?
I have a question if Paul
Sure.
has any thoughts. I have, and many people I know have a sensitive child who internalizes thoughts about guidance or suggestion or, do it, encouraging dependence as criticism or views it in a negative light. And, we do have to parent these children as well as support them. What thoughts would you have on connecting with a highly sensitive child who deeply feels any type of correction in a very negative way?
Great question. I think the first thing is to always start with a positive. You probably know this already because you're a good mom, but it's always starting with making them feel, what it is you're loving about them. And if there's an issue that needs some kind of correction or guidance, then I would just do it really gently and say, this is great, 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 great. I love the fact that you took the dog out and, did the things that you're supposed to do, excuse me, whatever it is. But I need to talk to you about something that we need to talk about this. So it's really kind of doing it in a very gentle, non-critical way. maybe copying to some stuff yourself on that issue. You know, this happens to me too. I do this, your dad does this, your sister does this. So you're not, you know, alone about it. But I'm just feeling that I want to talk to you about it. That makes sense? And again, if you take the assessment, the bullets that I went through on those two types are on for all the types. And, you know, if you have, I just had them up on a screen for 10 seconds. But if you look at it, you might be able to have more time to kind of percolate on it.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hi. Well, you know what? Let me just do this. Let me do this real quickly. Just put the screen up. Sorry about this. Sorry. I'm hoping not giving anybody a stroke here. Okay, so this is my information. It's my email address, my phone number, and I'm assuming, Rebecca, that everybody's got the link, right?
So I'll send this out in an email to everybody because I have everybody's emails from
Okay.
registering for this.
Okay.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
can put that in. Yeah.
And I'm really, really happy to talk to anybody about any of this stuff. It's a sincere offer, so I hope you take me up on it. Okay.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so you know what? Before we go, I just want to share with everyone, I'm going to put this information in the chat. Oops. That Community of Concern has a couple of events coming up that I think that some of you, and hopefully all of your kiddos, if you have middle and high school kids, would want to participate in. So one is next Wednesday. Sarah Barzak and I do a parent support group for parents with kids who have ADHD. And we are hosting a neurodivergent coach. Her name is Maggie Roberts. She's local, and she's going to come talk to parents and give advice about the school-home connection, and kind of supports and how to deal with accommodations and all that good stuff. So it should be really helpful if that's something that is helpful for your family. So the flyer is in a Google link that I put in the chat. And then April 5th, so that's a Saturday, the first Saturday in April, we're hosting a teen wellness fair with a student art show. I put the flyer link in the chat for that too. That's going to be a really fun event. It's at Town Hall. We did it at Hall High School last year, but we're going to have it even bigger and better at Town Hall. So we'll have all kinds of fun things for students to do. And we have a couple workshops for parents. We have lots of organizations that are going to bring their resources. So I hope you can drop your kids off and come to and enjoy that. And Paul's actually going to have a table there, so he'll be there to engage with people. So that's what we have coming up. Just wanted to share. And is there anything else anyone wants to ask or
Let me
share?
just say one little thing. So this here book called Nurture by Nature is it was really the first parenting book that connected personality type with parenting. It starts with, you know, at infancy, goes on through high school. And I'm gonna have some books at the fair. So if you come up to me and let me know, I probably will have one for you. No charge. This is not something I'm trying to make money on. This is something we just want to share the wealth. So that, just want to put that plug in there.
All right. Well, thanks, Paul, so much for
Thank you.
doing this. And to all of you for coming out tonight. I hope this was helpful and interesting. And like Paul has put himself available if you have follow-up questions or want to talk to him about this with respect to your own specific situation. So be
Thank you so
well.
much, Rebecca and Jen. Thank you so very much for doing this. And thank you all for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.